Welcome to the channel and thank you for choosing to watch this video. My name is Jonathan and I work in the offshore global business industry. In this video, we will explore what the funding of terrorism is and how it is defined by international regulatory agencies and credible source information providers. We will also look into some of the ways that terrorist organizations use to raise and acquire funds to finance their illicit and illegal activities. Lastly, we shall look into the 4 stages of the terrorist financing process. The Financial Intelligence Unit of Guernsey, which is the competent authority within the bailiwick of Guernsey for the receipt of disclosures of suspicious activity reports, defines terrorist financing as, quote, providing funds for terrorist activity. It may involve funds raised from the legitimate sources such as personal donations and profits from business and charitable organizations, as well as from criminal sources such as drug trafficking, fraud, smuggling of weapons and other goods, kidnapping, and extortion. The EU Global Facility on Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism, established by the European Commission in 2017, describes terrorist financing as, quote, the raising of money involving the solicitation, collection, or provision of funds with the intention that it may be used to support terrorist acts, terrorists, or terrorist organizations. And finally, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime defines terrorist financing as encompassing, quote, the means and methods used by terrorist organizations to finance their activities. This money can come from legitimate sources, for example from business profits and charitable organizations, or from illegal activities including trafficking in weapons, drugs or people, or kidnapping. In a nutshell, the financing of terrorism refers to the provision of funds or financial resources to support terrorist activities or organizations. It involves the movement of money through various channels and methods to facilitate acts of terror. The financing of terrorism is a crucial component of terrorist operations, as it enables these groups to sustain their activities, acquire weapons, recruit members, and maintain their infrastructure. It is extremely important to note that within the context of terrorist financing in the offshore global business sector, terrorist organizations are not solely Middle Eastern based or related. My videos do not carry any political agendas. However, in this instance, on top of such most recognized terrorist organizations such as ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, Hamas, and Hezbollah, there are numerous non-Middle Eastern based terrorist organizations in operations around the globe, which include, to name a few, the 18th Street Gang from El Salvador, Boko Haram in Nigeria, the Atom Waffle Division and all neo-Nazi groups, whether in Germany, Russia or internationally, and the Ku Klux Klan in the United States, to name a few. Finally, terrorism is not just attributed to groups, gangs or organizations, but may also be perpetrated by individuals singly. Famous examples include the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski and Timothy McVeigh, all of whom used explosives to spread terror in the United States. Terrorism is not just attached to fanatism, extremism, or radicalization of religions, but is also based on extremist, non-religious ideologies. The primary objective of terrorism financing is to ensure the smooth functioning and growth of terrorist networks while concealing the true source of funds. Terrorists require financial resources to sustain their activities, whether they belong to large terrorist organizations with territorial control or small terrorist cells. These funds can come from legitimate sources or through criminal means, such as looting, extortion, robbery, exploiting non-profit organizations, kidnapping for ransom, and cash smuggling. The money is used for acquiring weapons, facilitating travel and accommodation, as well as planning, training, and executing terrorist attacks. Insufficient funds can hamper their ability to carry out attacks and hinder their organizational growth. Terrorist financing may intersect with money laundering when illicit proceeds are used to fund terrorist activities. However, the financial transactions associated with terrorist financing often involve smaller amounts compared to typical money laundering cases, making detection more challenging. They may exploit vulnerabilities in the financial system, including informal channels and emerging technologies to evade detection and traceability. Formal methods used to move their funds would include the banking system, whilst informal value transfer systems would include the likes of hawalas and hundis and physical transportation of cash, gold, and other valuables through smuggling routes. These tactics enable them to conceal the movement of funds and complicate tracking efforts by authorities. In recent years, the face of terrorism has evolved, with attacks becoming simpler and the emergence of terrorist cells. This shift has resulted in less complex networks and command structures compared to traditional organized terrorist groups. The changing landscape of terrorism and the use of diverse financing methods pose significant challenges for authorities in detecting and combating terrorist financing. Efforts to disrupt terrorist financing require enhanced vigilance, cooperation among financial institutions, regulatory bodies, and law enforcement agencies, and the development of effective strategies to identify and prevent the flow of funds to support terrorist activities. The Financial Crime Academy's website illustrates the 4 stages involved in the financing of terrorism, which we shall now be covering. The first stage is collecting, where funds intended for a terrorist or terror organization are generated. These funds can come from various sources, including direct donations, charities, non-profit organizations, criminal activities, and even legal business operations, as previously mentioned at the start of this video. The second stage is storing, where the funds received are bundled and stored in a convenient manner. This can involve bank accounts, prepaid cards, high-value commodities like oil, art, and precious metals, as well as cryptocurrencies and cash. The funds are held in storage until they are planned and determined for use in terrorist-intended activities. The first stage is moving, where the stored funds are transferred from one location to another. Depending on the method of storage, funds may be moved through traditional banking channels, money service business, the use of shell or offshore companies, the hawala financial system, physical smuggling of cash or assets, or transferring cryptocurrencies to other wallets. This stage carries a high risk, particularly regarding international economic sanctions, making terrorists vulnerable during this phase. The fourth and final stage is using the funds. At this stage, the funds are put to practical use by the terrorist organization. Examples include purchasing weapons, materials, equipment, media and messaging services, training, salaries, funding foreign fighters, organizing travel services, and covering passport and visa costs. Some funds may also be used for day-to-day expenses that are difficult to identify as terrorism-related. Understanding and disrupting each stage of terrorist financing is crucial in combating terrorism effectively. By targeting these stages, authorities can detect, track, and interdict the flow of funds, limiting terrorists' ability to carry out attacks and sustain their operations. Implementing robust measures and international cooperation is essential in combating terrorist financing and safeguarding global security. The financing of terrorism is a grave threat to global security and its stability. It fuels violence, promotes radical ideologies, and undermines the rule of law. To counter this menace, countries worldwide have implemented stringent measures to detect, prevent, and disrupt the flow of funds to terrorist organizations. These measures include robust anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing frameworks, international cooperation, information sharing, targeted financial sections, and the monitoring of financial transactions. Effectively combating the financing of terrorism requires the collaboration of governments, financial institutions, regulatory bodies, and law enforcement agencies. Enhanced due diligence, risk assessments, and suspicious transaction reporting are essential components of the efforts to identify and disrupt the financial networks supporting terrorism By cutting off the financial lifeline of terrorist organizations, we can significantly undermine their operations and contribute to global security and peace. Thank you for watching this video until the end. This is once again greatly appreciated from my end. If you found the content of this video informative, feel free to subscribe to the channel and set the notification bell to not miss out on frequent and insightful content. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Cheers.